What is up, everybody? So this story is something else. As I do when I always talk about the COVID stuff, I have to kind of remember that I'm in a place where we've been, in comparison to a lot of the other states, our experience hasn't been the same. And, because we're over this whole deal, and it doesn't mean that others aren't. And you got to kind of put that into perspective that there's still people keeping up with this charade. And it's insane, but it is still a thing that in 2023, there are people still going on about this sort of stuff. So this was a post that I saw. It popped up in my thread. And in Paterson, New Jersey, the students are required to wear masks again as they return to class from their winter break. So they just had the little winter break, and now they're having to come back and have diapers on their face again. Like I said, the fact that there's still people doing it, especially with all the evidence that, a lot of that stuff was a sham anyway, and it's still people are keeping up with the charade like that, and more so forcing that on students and young folk is insane. And the official cited the low vaccination rates as a main concern, but did not wear masks during the Tuesday briefing because the rules don't apply to them. And so they're saying low vaccination rates. Now, remember, it has already been confirmed that did not prevent transmission. Okay, that's not an opinion. I get to say that on YouTube, by the way. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. Dr. Rochelle Walensky even conceded that. What was that? Probably almost 2 years ago. But she conceded that. We covered that many times on this channel when she finally admitted that, look, what we know now, it doesn't prevent transmission. So what on earth are you talking about in terms of the vaccination rates, and why would that have anything to do with why people are wearing? And again, we can talk about the effectiveness and have a dispute about the effectiveness of the face diaper anyway. But we know that it doesn't prevent the transmission. So why on earth would you be tying that to whether or not they have to wear it? It makes no sense whatsoever. But for whatever reason, there are people still, I got to remember, in the upper East Coast, there's people still doing this stuff. But let's listen to what this guy had to say, because that was a point of contention. Like, hey, you're an adult, you're not wearing it, and you're telling the students that they have to wear it. What's up with that? So let's listen to what he had to say.
The mindset that the pandemic is over. It's not. I have to continue to emphasize this ad nauseum.
During the news conference inside International High School, I asked why those announcing a school mask mandate had taken theirs off.
Well, I took it off to speak, and I'm boosted, taking it off to speak, and we're 6 feet apart. The mindset that the
basically it's like, oh, I get to do it, and I was like, I'm boosted. Like, dude, nobody cares. And look, I have my own issues with public schools and the fact that there's still so many of y'all still sending y'all's kids there despite all of the rotten stuff that had long been a thing, but a lot of y'all had to wake up to it because it kind of smacked you in your face with the type of stuff that's going on and has been taking place in your the institutions that your little ones, right, are going to. I guess you treat it more like a daycare. And that's what I've said, and I know it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but it is one that you should, I think, be having with yourself, not me. And that is that if you know all this rotten stuff is happening in the schools, at what point does it become child abuse in the event that you continue to drop them off at that indoctrination camp? That's the uncomfortable one, and you'll always get, well, I can't, we have, what about this and what about that? People have no choice because work, yada, yada, yada. And it's funny, it's like sacrifice, right? Which is really what this all boils down to. If not for your kids, then for who? I think there's alternatives that people just throw by the wayside because they don't know exist. Because they they went to public schools themselves, and they had got tricked and it worked maybe, and they assume that like homeschooling or even some of the private co-op alternatives are so expensive. And they're not. There's other options out there. I don't know what the hell you've been thinking. Folk in the South been doing without that much money, yet they still been doing co-ops and private schools and homeschooling despite not being rich. I don't know where that information was, where the propaganda worked. the indoctrination worked because it fooled parents into believing that really the only option that they have is to give their kids over to the state. But these guys are criminals. Obviously, the state in itself is a criminal institution anyway. But you really see how cocky these guys are, that even years after the fact, I mean, it's just amazing to hear this be talked about in 2023. But even years after the fact, they are still doing this stuff, and they doing it smiling in your face like, hey, look at me. I'm not wearing it, but, you know, it's okay for me to wear it. I'm boosted. Like, what? And then when you know what the data says about that information anyway, it's not even a valid thing for you to push that on young folk, which is remember, the demographic that is least, number one, as far as, let's say, some things that may happen in the event that they get it and they have a side effect and who it impacted. Is that the trade-off that you want? While giving it that to young people for a virus that if they got it even naturally per se, they're for the most part going to be fine. The vast majority of them, one of the least vulnerable in terms of the population. Yet you're still pushing this on them. Look, these guys are criminals. But this don't stop until the people in that geographical area decide that it's going to stop. But this guy, along with the other officials, are going to continue to kick this can down the road, and it's quite amazing to believe. Wherever you're viewing the content, I appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, you may be interested in my comic book company, Rippaverse Comics. Our first book and campaign, ISOM #1, brought in $3.7 million with tens of thousands of satisfied customers. Visit Rippaverse.com to check out our store and stay up to date with the latest campaigns from one of the hottest new comic book companies. Also, my first big step towards a parallel economy was the development of my personal website, ericdjuly.com. This entirely replaced my Patreon. Now, if you enjoy this content, please consider becoming a member over at the website. We have an ever-expanding list of perks for various membership tiers, a forum, and a phone app. Some of these perks will even benefit you if you're fans of the Rippaverse. Anyway, I appreciate you so much for being a supporter and or customer. I even got a little love for my haters.